Hi, I'm Joe Loy. I'm a Marine veteran, and I think you're going to want to hear my story. In 1986, after the passing of my father and the divorce of my parents, and graduating high school, um, there was one thing that was a beacon of hope. Is I had been working with Marine veterans, and so it instilled that in me. Um, So in '86, 8 months after graduation, I joined the United States Marine Corps, headed off to Parris Island, where 3 months later, through what I can only describe is a breaking down and rebuilding of a person that didn't exist prior to the yellow footprints, I graduated with honors, one of four out of a company of graduates received at that time, were awarded the Dress Blues leaving boot camp. I was meritoriously promoted to private first class and headed off to ITS at Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, infantry training school, where I successfully became a machine gunner in 0331. Was one of the first teams to fire the Mach 19, the machine grenade launcher off of a Humvee. It was really, really cool stuff. Upon graduation from there, my company commander came to me and asked me to put together a small detachment that would be needed in Guantanamo Bay, Cuba. You all probably are aware of a few good men. Well, we were the relief effort after those trials, and the command had vacated, and so we came to a base where there was little intel in regards to the operations of the fence line, which is what protected us from communist Cuba and at that time the Red Berets from Russia. They were trying to steal our intel, and numerous interactions with the Cuban National Forces led by Fidel Castro. I rose to a leadership position there within command, eventually being lead Marine. Was not a corporal, so but I led my platoon to many successes. Upon time to depart, the suggestion was made, and I agreed. I received orders for Marine Security Guard Battalion. Now that's where an oxymoron is created, okay? You take the world's finest fighting men and you introduce them to a bunch of State Department individuals and FBI, and you tell them, hey, we're gonna intensify your training, but we're also gonna turn you into diplomats. Well, 3 months later, I graduate from there, and I have been selected to honor the embassy in Beirut, Lebanon, where 2 years earlier we had lost 232 Marines in one day's bombing, one of the first signs of terrorism in the world, where they hated us for who we were. And I was going to a country where I had a bounty on my head. The embassy had been drawn down to essential staff just because of the political culture of Beirut. Radical Muslim, Hezbollah terrorist group on one side, and Christian fascists fighting to rule the east side, and put an embassy right in the middle, and we're trying to work both sides of it. Needless to say, there were quite a few attacks on the embassy and their personnel. One specifically where I'm accredited with aiding in saving someone's life is that of Ambassador John Kelly, known as the Assistant Secretary of State for the region. His motorcade came under attack. I'm accredited with having the wherewithal and the leadership to rally communications between entities and to operate physical barriers that actually separated the motorcade from the terrorists that were attempting to kidnap the ambassador. Later on, there were several drawdowns, coup attempt, where I overthrew a machine gun bunker, and then during one of the drawdowns, I escorted personnel, and I was never to return to Beirut. I received orders to the embassy in Oslo, Norway, where I quickly took on a leadership position because my conduct and my character information had traveled through command and now was being acknowledged by the Secretary of Navy, the Secretary of the Department of State, and command. And so I went from being a Lance Corporal to a sergeant in a year and a half. I was awarded #1 Marine at the detachment and soon started going out on detachments for working alongside the Secret Service and the FBI agents assigned to dignitaries, from presidents to former presidents to governmental officials traveling for diplomatic reasons in the region. And so many a times I found myself in foreign countries, only to be standing in a hallway guarding a fruit basket. During that time period, I started having this condition where I would cramp a lot, and so if you know the MSG battalion, it's very vigorous, long hours, and nutrition kind of falls wayside, so it was easy for me to kind of write it off. No, I didn't go to the sick bay. Well, my tour of active duty and the transition into my non-active status for 4 years was about to happen, and I was discharged. What took me 2 weeks to have happened in 3 days. At that time, I was asked a question, were you diagnosed with anything? I had rounds, percussions, fell. I was in a war-torn country, and I responded appropriately as a United States Marine. But at that time, I'm 21 years old. The answer was, I'm fine, I'm hard charging, I'm good to go. Well, I leave there, and I'm blessed to work for a company that is the Mattman Company, and they have been awarded the contract to take an actual copy of the Bill of Rights to all 50 states in an educational promotional campaign to educate everyone on the 200th anniversary of the ratification of the Bill of Rights. What an honor it was. It continued right in line with my presidential details in regards to, we had armored vehicles that carried it, environmental conditions, and we were receiving intel locally. A few threats, but nothing major. It's blessed. Culturally wise, I was with 25 other Marine security guards. I was with my brother, Semper Fidelis. And I was fortunate enough, there was a press agent on the tour that came in and out, and I started dating her and later fell in love with her, and we married shortly after the tour. Fast forward 10 years, I've been inside the industry of providing vehicles, mobile command centers, SWAT and bomb trucks, those very units that I worked in while on the Bill of Rights tour, and also in the protective services. And what an honor it was. And so I went from sweeping floors to upper management to at the birth of my daughter, moving to Nashville and opening up a company that did just that, Loyalty Mobile Innovations. I was blessed. We, in a short amount of time, became one of the leaders in the industry. This is post 9/11, so the budgets had blown wide open. we were building technology that no one had ever seen in a mobile application, and a great honor. We went from myself being the salesperson to a team of 32 in 16 years. So at the same time, my cramps had progressed to Bell's palsy and fatigue and mental loss and weight loss. Everybody's saying, this is what happens when in a divorce, and I wasn't getting any better. And so during that transitional period, the two people that shined bright in my life were my children. I said, I'm going to do this differently. I'm not going to be the statistic like my father and mother were. I'm going to be here regardless of the choices that are made. I'm going to be here for my children. And so I moved out to my barn, and I contracted pneumonia and bronchitis. I was camping inside there in the middle of December. Not a smart move, but what do you do for love? And so I find myself going to the doctor. Now, as a CEO, financially, I had my own insurance, didn't need to rely upon VA, and so, and I had really good doctors. I went to the doctors, and I was first diagnosed with 1 week with pneumonia, the next week with Lyme's disease, and the next week with lupus. My life was deteriorating, it was changing drastically. 2 months later, I'm unable to live in the barn. My wife has moved on and is now dating someone. It's obvious that that's over, and I have to move someplace that's a single level. Blessed to find a home nearby. The illness progressed from the cramping to this, and all of a sudden I find myself unable to form sentences, losing my physical faculties. I go to referred to a neurosurgeon, Dr. McComb. He says, yeah, you're having a brain hemorrhage, and you have a brain tumor that's crushed your pituitary gland, the master gland that controls your bodily functions in regards to hormones and chemicals. And so you're going to need an endocrinologist. And he refers me to Dr. Jerkins, and what a godsend that was. And so we put off the first surgery for 1.5 years until the symptoms got too bad that they thought, and the tumor wasn't shrinking due to medications, that we needed to go in. We went in 3 days later, so relieved, symptoms are declining, and I'm back to work the next week. Yeah, fast forward another 2 years, the tumors are back. There's a decline. My investors, half of them are no longer believing in me because they saw the downward trend when I was sick the first time, and so they're really hesitant and on the fence. Well, a month later, 21 days in a medically induced coma, can't focus, in such pain that I'm vomiting, and other surgeries are all needed. A total of 7 surgeries in that time period. Then 40 days of radiation. After the 40 days of radiation, I returned back to work, only to find 2 years later that I'm being debilitated because of the TBI that occurred during those surgeries, where the forward ventricles of my brain were no longer serving as passageways for nutrients, oxygen, and fuel and waste. And so my frontal lobe was decreasing, and there was a drastic decline in my mental capability. Everything from stuttering, and at times you will see that, and facial twitches. It just some of the symptoms of having this chronic disease disorder. And so a little while later, I lost faith in the doctors that we had, based off of the care that they provided post-surgery. and the informational flow and the lack of diagnosis that allowed me to determine that I had water on the brain for many years prior to actually another doctor finding it and treating it in a short amount of time. So bionic man, got a valve here, shunts go into my brain, bypass the damaged valves and send a catheter and allow the extra fluid that was building up in my brain to drain into my abdomen. Shortly after that, I started to increase in my abilities, but cognitively I was continuing to be on a decline. In 2016, it all came crashing to an end. My faculties were that my angel financing had lost faith in my ability to run the company. And within 30 days, they moved in, they seized all assets, took all funds, banking, and loyalty came to an end. 30 days later, bankruptcy takes my home. And I find myself homeless, sick, depressed, physically, mentally disabled. First time in my life anybody had ever used the word PTSD. I spiraled to the point where I was living in a tent next to the river and self-medicating myself with alcohol and recreational drugs to numb the pain. At which time I sat one night, put a clip in my .40 cal pistol and chambered around. If it wasn't for the love of my children, I will not be here today. I had a faint glimpse of them, and it was just so sobering that I couldn't leave them like my father had left me in death. I knew the pain that caused. And so reached out to a friend that I'd isolated myself from, and he agreed to allow me to stay in his garage. A year and a half later, my son and daughter are starting to be back into my life. And my son says, "Dad, there are people that need help. Hurricane just hit the Keys. We got to go. We got camping gear. We got MREs. We got to go help." And this started the mission trip. If it wasn't for the benefit of my endocrinologist providing aid while I was down and having affiliations with Social Security and aid, I still would be in that condition. The VA wasn't going to help me. I heard no from them on 7 occasions. Call us when this happens, call us when this happens. Here's a pile of paperwork. I couldn't focus for 2 seconds. Well, here I am, and we have the money from Social Security, and I'm renting a home. I'm proud to say now that my son has lived with me now for 2 years, and my daughter is active today as ever. Actually, she's the one behind the lens. Grayson and Simon are my beacon of hope that got me through some of the darkest hours, and through the grace of God, I am still here. And so that brings me to January, where I had a heart attack. After a lot of testing, I was diagnosed that I'd been walking around at 95% bradycardia, and my heart was beating 50% less, suffering from cognitive ability to physical abilities. They put a pacemaker in. What a miracle. God has saved me. I woke up to that, and I now am here to tell you that I see in full living color. There's an epidemic in our nation, homeless veterans. God's put a calling on my heart to go out and be the bridge between the social aid that is available and these people on the streets. They deserve better. They fought for our country. We left them on the battlefield. They're sick. They need help. UR-6 has been founded, and we're on our way. I'm proud to say, through the generous donations and giving of camping gear, survival food, and tools, we're going to be the beacon of hope, going on patrol and looking for these entities and linking them up with the social services that are available. I thank you for your continued support. I need your prayers as we move forward. This is a defined mission, one that we can overcome. Thank you.